Okay, welcome to another edition of WJ Now. Today we'll be talking about the midterm races a little bit around the country, especially the Senate races. But first I want to look at one of the most recent instances of FBI abuse. And you may have heard of this, but in Pennsylvania, the FBI went after a pro-life family, specifically Mark Houck, who is he does sidewalk counseling at an abortion clinic once a week in Pennsylvania, and so he'll be praying there. And this incident involved him actually taking his son last year, who was 12 at the time, Mark Jr., and they were doing the sidewalk counseling. And one of the escorts for Planned Parenthood came up to the men, and especially to the son, and was just saying all kinds of vulgar things, according to the wife, who gave an interview about all this. And eventually the father stepped in and asked him to step away. He said he had not given him permission to talk to his son, and especially not in that way. And so the Planned Parenthood escort would not do so. And so eventually the father, pushed him back. The man fell to the ground and he scraped his elbow, reportedly. The local prosecutors decided to not press charges because it was so minor. And, clearly there were problems on both sides of the equation, right? This man was doing inappropriate things towards the son. Apparently there's even video of this out there, according to the Houck side of things. So prosecutors did not press charges. And then the escort, the man in question, filed a criminal complaint. But the judge ultimately dismissed the case. And I understand also a civil claims, for damages were also dismissed. So at the Pennsylvania state court level, this went nowhere. Well, the Biden DOJ stepped in, Merrick Garland's DOJ, and they decided to press what is called a FACE Act violation. And it holds some pretty hefty, potentially 11 years in prison and $350,000 in fines, up to, for this pushing incident. And the act itself addresses whether, it was passed so that people would not impede those trying to seek an abortion. In other words, you can't get in their way or block them or whatever. So clearly this incident of a pushing between an escort who was not helping any person trying to get into the clinic at the time, but instead was harassing this boy, this act has nothing to do with it. So the Houck's attorney, informed the DOJ of that, saying you've got no case. But they said, nonetheless, if you should decide to file charges because there had been an investigation, he said, my client will gladly surrender himself, and you can charge him and do the things you need to do. Well, the FBI, the DOJ, decided they were not going to go that route. Instead, they decided to do a SWAT-like raid on the family's house out in rural Pennsylvania. According to the wife, 15 vehicles showed up, guns drawn. But let's take a look at this clip that was aired on the program Flashpoint last week with Patrick Delaney, who's with LifeSite News, who spoke directly to the wife.
It's 7:05. About 15 vehicles from the FBI came swarming around the house. They're in a country property, and Ryan Marie, the mother of the house, the wife, explained that 25 to 30 of these agents surrounded the house with their guns in firing position, and they started banging on the door. They have 7 children. The oldest child is 13, and the youngest is 2, and the children are screaming. It is horrifying. And Mark Houck went to the door, and he said, please, I'm going to open the door, but please, my children are here. And he opened the door, and they had the guns pointed at them and everything. And it was very traumatic. And we had an interview with Brian Middleton, who is the spokesperson for the Houck family, yesterday on LifeSiteNews.com. Your viewers can go and watch it. But he said that the family is still traumatized, and they're really focused on the kids and ministering to the kids to help them get over this absolutely outrageous assault upon their home and upon their psyche by Merrick Garland's DOJ and the FBI.
And I wrote a story about this last week, and Houck's attorney was, he gave an interview with Fox News, and he was saying, whatever possessed the FBI to send a raid out for a potential, violation of this level, a shoving incident. Are you kidding me? And where nobody, a scrape was involved, and the law, the federal law they're trying to apply has nothing to do with the issue at hand. It's really a terroristic tactic, and we've seen this with relation to the January 6th defendants, where they never went into the. Many defendants got SWAT raided who never went into the actual Capitol, never engaged in any violence. They were just there protesting what they felt was an election that was not fairly conducted, exercising their constitutional right to, petition their government for redress of grievance. But yet they're getting these SWAT raids. But I thought Delaney, a little later in that interview, really described what's going on here. So let's watch that next clip.
Make the case exactly according to definitions of why this is a case of terrorism, and it's regular behavior, unfortunately, for our DOJ. They've been doing it across the country, and they've been targeting political enemies of the president and of the administration, and it's very obvious. And violence that is motivated for a political purpose, especially against civilians, is called terrorism. And we have to have the courage to call it what it is. I think they're going to keep going until they hit a force that is stronger than them. And that has to be the American people. It has to be, hopefully, November 8th elections that can neutralize what these people are doing. Right. And hopefully we'll have some hope for the future, and with lots of prayers and effort.
Switching to the how the midterms do look, what we see is that the races are tightening. The House has been looking pretty good for a while. The most recent Fox rankings has the GOP picking up, perhaps, are getting to 230 seats in the House, which would give them a solid majority. 218 is needed to have a majority, and right now they're just 5-6 seats short of that. So that's where the House is looking pretty good. But of course, it's the state level races that are tight. And right now we have a 50-50 Senate between the two parties. And the Republicans are defending more than the Democrats are in the Senate races that are up this year. But it's looking good. And Newt Gingrich talked about this recently on Fox News.
Well, I think you see both with Fetterman in Pennsylvania and with Mandela Barnes in Wisconsin, that the weight of their radical ideas is gradually killing their campaigns. The lead that Fetterman had originally when he was unknown and people didn't realize how pro-murderer he was, how pro-drug legalization he was, how much he was in fact a threat to the very safety of the community. Remember, Philadelphia yesterday had their 1,000th carjacking of the year, setting an all-time record for the number of carjackings in Philadelphia. So over 70% of the voters in Philadelphia say that crime is their greatest concern and safety is their greatest concern. That is a huge burden for Fetterman, and you're beginning to see it in the polls.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like in Pennsylvania, Fetterman, he's the Mr. Hoodie guy. He wears his hoodie around. He's Mr. Casual. He's going to go to the Senate and I don't know what, but that would be his plan anyway. But because they wear suits down there, hopefully he would wear a suit. It's the Capitol. But hopefully he will not win. Is what will happen. Mehmet Oz has been gaining consistently, and I think what's happened is, as Newt Gingrich said, as people have gotten to know Fetterman and his soft on crime policies, he said that half of the prison population in Pennsylvania needs to be released, and other things along that line. And as Gingrich pointed out, Philadelphia right now, the largest city in the state, is just experiencing record crime, murders, like you said, carjackings, robberies. We've even seen some of that recently at a Wawa food market that got ransacked, and the people of Pennsylvania are coming to see this. I think the Democrats were hoping that abortion would be a bigger deal. And of course, all the Dobbs decision did in the summer was say it's a state issue. So, you've got to get the state legislators. If you want to change Pennsylvania's abortion laws, you've got to do it at the state level. But I think they hoped that this would really carry them over. But I think the issues that are coming to the fore again, according to polling, are, inflation and crime, big everyday life issues, and that trends against Fetterman and for Oz, who's online with the Save America agenda, Make America Great Again. So that, I think that bodes well for him in Pennsylvania. They're starting to vote there right now, but that race is trending towards him. So that's the one race that the GOP, in my opinion, is defending that perhaps looks the most precarious. Right now, it's Pat Toomey's seat, which is Republican. But on the Democrat side, they've got, here in Arizona is one of the seats they're defending. Nevada is a toss-up. And Georgia is also a toss-up. That's another seat they're defending. So all the GOP needs to do is pick up, one seat to get the majority. And of course, if they were to lose, say, Pennsylvania, they need to pick up 2 seats. And I think both Nevada and Georgia are looking very strong for the GOP and trending in their direction. And then, like here in Arizona, we've got Blake Masters is also moving up, and he's now 4 points behind, according to the Real Clear Politics average, and he had been 8. And again, I think people are starting to look at this. Mark Kelly has been fully on with the Biden agenda. He's voted for the American Rescue Plan, the about the $2 trillion bill that even people from the Obama administration say, it's like Larry Summers say, contributed to the current inflation that we're having. And he was for the Inflation Reduction Act. He voted for that. He's basically voted for every Biden agenda item. And so if he were to continue on in that Senate seat, he would continue to do so because he did it knowing that he was up for re-election here in Arizona, which right now has Republican-controlled state legislature on the Senate and the House side, and then also a Republican governor. So it's certainly purple, if not reddish state. And so I think this is another good pickup opportunity. I think the Republicans could be in a good place to get perhaps 53 seats in the Senate. And then also here in Arizona, one of the high-profile races is the governor's race. Kari Lake's been endorsed by Donald Trump. She's up against Katie Hobbs, who was the Secretary of State during the 2020 election, which, of course, was controversial how it happened here in Arizona. And she's been dodging. She will not debate Kari Lake. And so while she was ahead in early September, she's now fallen behind Kari Lake, who's starting to expand her lead. So things are looking pretty good. The Western Journal's Olivia Brown caught up with Kari Lake last week and asked her a question about at an event here in Phoenix about what her pro-family agenda would be.
You just said that you want to make Arizona a place for families. What policies will you be putting in place to make it more family friendly?
Well, I talked a little bit first about the economy. It's really hard for moms and dads right now to just put food on the table. $1 when Joe Biden took office is now worth just 85 cents. So when that happens, we know that our dollar doesn't stretch as far. We go to put food on the table, we can't afford that food. We can't afford the gas. So we're going to work with some tax breaks that will affect everyday Arizonans, including working to reduce that food tax and the rent tax. That hits them right where the bills are. And we're going to work to make sure our kids are properly educated. I talked a little bit about our education. We have ESA for All, which means that we are now funding the student and not the school. If you don't like the curriculum at the school that your kids are going to, you can say, you know what, we're pulling them out, we're going to go to private school, we're going to go to a charter school, and the money will follow. This is going to be freedom for so many kids who might be trapped in a zip code with a school that's not working for them. And then finally, we're going to make sure our streets are safe. We are going to back our officers, or back the blue, as they say. That every single police force in the state is fully staffed. Right now they aren't. Hundreds and hundreds of officers down. And we're going to make it where every officer wants to come here, where our young men and young women want to become police officers because they know they're going to have the support. The governor's going to support them, and we're no longer going to have a hostile environment for our police. We want them in our neighborhoods. We want them to make our neighborhoods safe, and we want our kids to be able to go out and play and ride bikes in the street and enjoy the park.
So yeah, Kari Lake seems to be gaining good momentum here in Arizona. So I think she's starting to look pretty good as the next governor of Arizona. And we also Olivia spoke with Kelly Ward, who is the chairman of the Republican Party here in Arizona. And she further discuss the current state of play in the state.
I think that it's obvious from this event tonight that Kari is knocking it out of the park with every demographic in our state. She's leading in really every poll. Katie Hobbs continues to run, to hide, to act cowardly. She, as Kari said tonight, she's in a job interview. She's interviewing with all of us. And how many people have you ever hired, or has anybody out there ever hired, that didn't come to an interview? I'd probably say very, very few. We at the Republican Party of Arizona are doing a lot with Kari Lake and with the campaign. We are working very, very hard on the field program, knocking on doors, making phone calls, making sure that we are reaching voters, not only to inform them about Kari Lake, but now to drive them to the polls, because ballots drop in just, I think, 13 days. And so people will be voting in about 14 days and all the way through till November 8th.
Do you have a statement on taxpayers paying for the legal fees of Katie Hobbs with her racism lawsuit?
Yes. Well, I mean, it is a shame, but that's the system as it currently exists. So we have to be a lot smarter about who we elect to serve us in all of these offices. Obviously, we made a bad choice as Arizona for the Secretary of State in the last election. We have a chance to correct that mistake. We can elect Kari Lake as governor, and we can elect Mark Fincham into that Secretary of State role, and have Kari or have Katie Hobbs to be unelected and out on her ear.
Do you believe that Katie Hobbs is racist?
Well, I think that the system speaks for itself. Talonya Adams, I know, she was a Senate staffer when I was in the state Senate. She is a super nice lady, very smart, intelligent, and I always had a great relationship when I was there. But for Katie Hobbs to do what she did to Talonya, somebody does have to pay. They have to compensate for the racism that Katie Hobbs, and the sexism, because it wasn't just the color of her skin, it was also her gender that put her lower than her male colleagues.
Katie Hobbs has been accused and had some lawsuits over the years of being discriminatory towards minorities, and so and I lost a case or two along the way. So that's an issue. But I think mostly the top issues are, of course, just the bread and butter issues of what's going on in Arizona, which Phoenix has the highest inflation of any metropolitan area in the country. So that's a big ticket item, and so I think these sort of issues are going to play well, for the Republican Party. And so want to thank you for joining us on another edition of WJ Now, and look forward to seeing you next time.